The palace of Xylaria shimmered like a jewel under the light of its twin suns. Towering spires of glass and metal reflected the brilliance of the sky, and the bustling city below hummed with the constant rhythm of advanced technology and commerce. From her private balcony, Princess Lyra looked down at the people moving through the streets, her sharp green eyes reflecting both pride and frustration. She was the heir of Xylaria, trained since childhood to lead her people with intelligence, courage, and a firm hand. She had fought simulations, negotiated trade deals, and learned dozens of languages. Yet she felt an unfamiliar irritation brewing that day. "I don't need one," she muttered, her voice barely audible above the wind brushing the palace towers. A human protector. Ridiculous? Her advisor, an older Xylarian named Master Soren, stood behind her, robes flowing with an elegance that only age and wisdom could command. "Princess," he said calmly, "the Galactic Council has made the assignment. The human officer is highly recommended. You will at least meet him." Lyra turned sharply, her brows furrowed. "Highly recommended. Humans are reckless, unpredictable. They are not like us." She swept her hand across the balcony, as if trying to dismiss the thought entirely. "I have my guards, my security drones, my own ship. I do not need a human wandering around, watching my every move." Soren's gaze softened. "Sometimes, Princess, it is not just skill that saves a life. It is perspective. You have the strength of Xylaria, but humans, they have other strengths. You may see for yourself soon enough." Lyra frowned but said nothing more. She had heard the warnings. The council rarely made mistakes. Yet the idea of being assigned a human protector felt insulting. To her, it seemed like a punishment. Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, Captain Elias Kane prepared for his journey in the human fleet. He was known for ingenuity and courage, qualities that had saved countless lives during skirmishes and diplomatic missions. Yet, being assigned to protect a foreign princess was unlike anything he had ever done. He was skilled in strategy and survival, but he had no experience dealing with royalty and certainly no experience dealing with the pride and stubbornness of Xylaria's heir. He stared at the official assignment hologram flickering before him. Princess Lyra of Xylaria, highly independent, does not welcome human presence, Elias chuckled, shaking his head. "Well, this is going to be interesting." The day of his arrival, the royal star cruiser hovered gracefully above Xylaria's palace. Lyra's guards escorted him into the grand hall, where the princess awaited. She was tall, commanding, her posture perfect, yet her eyes held a spark of curiosity mixed with irritation. Elias bowed slightly, keeping his expression neutral. "Princess Lyra, I am Captain Elias Kane, assigned as your protector by the Galactic Council." Lyra's lips pressed into a thin line. "I am aware of your assignment, Captain Kane. Your presence is noted." Her tone was polite but icy. "I do not require protection. I have my own team." Elias nodded, unshaken. "Understood, Princess. But as the Council's directive, I am here to ensure your safety, regardless of circumstance. I am trained in ways that complement your own skills." Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Complement? I have survived simulations that would have destroyed fleets. I have fought off threats you cannot imagine. And you think you compliment me?" Elias kept his calm, a faint smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "I do not underestimate you, Princess. I only hope to provide an additional perspective. Sometimes, an unexpected viewpoint is exactly what is needed." Lyra huffed and turned away, signaling that the conversation was over. But she could not hide the flicker of interest that passed over her features. Something about this human was different and usually calm and confident, yet respectful. It irritated her to admit it. Days passed, and Lyra found herself observing Elias more closely. He was efficient, yes, but not in the rigid, flawless manner of Xylarian soldiers. He improvised solutions, sometimes in ways that seemed reckless, yet every time he did, the results were unexpectedly effective. One morning, while reviewing security protocols for an upcoming diplomatic mission to the planet Virelia, Lyra watched him analyze potential threats with a kind of intuitive logic she had never seen in her own advisors. "Your methods are unorthodox," she remarked, her voice a mixture of skepticism and curiosity. Elias glanced up, a small grin appearing. Unorthodox, yes. Effective, also yes. Sometimes rules are guidelines. Princess, survival is about adaptability. Lyra blinked. She wanted to argue, to remind him that Xylarian precision had kept her alive through centuries of training. But she hesitated. There was a truth in his words she could not deny. The diplomatic mission to Varelia was announced, and preparations began immediately. Lyra's pride bristled at the thought of sharing control with a human. Yet she could not ignore the practical reality. The planet was known for political unrest and dangerous factions. If there were threats, she would need every advantage. As their starcruiser approached Varelia, the planet's surface came into view, a swirling mass of green and gray, with jagged mountains and vast industrial cities. Elias had been studying the local intelligence reports, while Lyra reviewed diplomatic documents. The air was tense, not because of the mission itself, but because of the silent competition between them. Neither wanted to show weakness. Princess, Elias said finally, breaking the quiet, I recommend we split the team strategically. We can cover more ground and ensure your safety without being too obvious. The Virelians value subtlety. Lyra folded her arms, frowning. Subtlety is often a sign of weakness. Sometimes subtlety is strength. He countered smoothly. We'll see how it plays out. She stared at him, eyes narrowing, trying to decipher his confidence. He was human, unpredictable, and yet, somehow, he seemed to know exactly what he was doing. Their first day on Varelia passed with minor incidents, a few tense meetings, wary glances from the locals, and the odd bureaucratic obstacle. But that evening, as the twin moons rose over the jagged skyline, an unsettling feeling took root in Lyra's chest. She paced the balcony of their temporary quarters, Elias following silently. You're unusually quiet, she observed. I'm listening, he replied simply. Lyra scoffed. Listening? I have guards, sensors, and a fleet of drones. I do not need someone to listen, he shrugged. Sometimes listening is more valuable than any weapon or device. You'd be surprised what people reveal when you just pay attention. Lyra stared at the horizon, the distant lights of the city flickering like fireflies. For the first time in years, she felt uncertain. There were forces on Varelia that she had not anticipated, and despite her training, a part of her wondered if she had underestimated the dangers ahead. Elias's presence, though initially irritating, now felt like a small reassurance. That night, as she prepared for sleep, Lyra found herself glancing at the human officer stationed outside her door. His posture was relaxed but alert, a strange combination she had not encountered in any Xylarian soldier. And for the first time, she allowed herself to think that maybe, just maybe, having him there would be useful. But she quickly pushed the thought away. She was Lyra of Xylaria. She did not need a human protector. She had never needed anyone to survive. Yet, in the quiet moments before dawn, the twin moons of Varelia casting silver light over the palace, a small voice in her mind whispered, survival was not just about strength. It was also about trust, about recognizing when someone could be more than what they seemed. And Elias Kane, human, unpredictable, stubborn, was proving to be exactly that. The city of Varelia sprawled beneath the starcruiser like a living, breathing organism. Towers of dark metal pierced the sky, and winding streets below teemed with vehicles that hummed silently as they moved. Princess Lyra, accompanied by Captain Elias Kane, stepped carefully onto the landing platform, her boots clicking against the reinforced metal. She had never been on Varelia before, and already a low sense of unease prickled at the back of her neck. This place feels unstable, she murmured, scanning the crowd. Elias walked beside her, hands clasped behind his back, eyes sharp and calculating. Unstable is putting it lightly, he replied. The intelligence reports were correct. The rival faction is active, and they do not welcome outsiders. We must be careful. Lyra bristled at the word careful. I have faced worse than street-level politics. I am capable of handling myself. Elias gave a faint smile, not mocking but gentle. I am sure you are, princess. But sometimes, danger does not announce itself. It arrives quietly, and it arrives in numbers? Lyra gave him a skeptical glance but did not reply. Her pride urged her to dismiss his words. Yet a small part of her could not ignore the way his eyes scanned the area, noticing details she would have missed. Their first engagement was a routine inspection of one of the city's major trade hubs. Lyra walked with her entourage, making polite greetings and acknowledging dignitaries. Elias stayed slightly behind, observing everyone in silence. Noting subtle signs of hostility in the crowd, he spotted a group of men whose eyes lingered too long on the princess, and the faint glint of hidden weapons beneath their cloaks. "Princess," he whispered as they paused near a fountain. 3 individuals in the eastern cluster. They are carrying concealed weapons. Not obvious, but enough to act if provoked. Lyra looked where he pointed, her sharp eyes catching the glimmer of steel. "You think they mean to attack?" she asked, her voice controlled but firm. "Possibly. But they are waiting for a signal. We need to remain calm and act smart." Lyra frowned. She had always preferred to confront threats directly. Yet, the calm authority in Elias's voice made her hesitate. Perhaps there was wisdom in his restraint. As they continued their inspection, the tension in the air thickened. The crowd grew restless, whispers spreading like wildfire. Suddenly, the faint hum of energy weapons being activated reached Elias's ears. He recognized the sound, immediately a warning. "Move," he said sharply, taking Lyra's hand and pulling her behind a large pillar. A series of small explosions erupted nearby as hidden mercenaries attacked. Chaos erupted in the trade hub. People screamed and scattered, and the air filled with the sharp scent of smoke and charged energy. Lyra's guards sprang into action, weapons drawn, but the attackers were fast, organized, and surprisingly skilled. She instinctively drew her own weapon, moving with precision. But the attackers came from unexpected directions. One of them lunged at her from behind, and she barely managed to parry the strike. Before she could react further, Elias leapt into action. He tackled the attacker, using a move she had never seen a human perform. It was fast, precise, and completely effective. Another mercenary aimed for the princess, but Elias intercepted him with a swift strike that sent the attacker sprawling across the floor. Lyra froze for a moment, watching. Her mind raced. She had always relied on her training, her guards, and her drones, but this human, he was saving lives, including hers, without hesitation, after the immediate threat was neutralized. The princess and her entourage regrouped. The attackers were either captured or fled, leaving behind confusion and destruction. Lyra looked at Elias, her expression a mixture of frustration and reluctant admiration. "You move differently than any Xylarian I have ever seen," she said, keeping her voice steady. "I adapt." He replied simply, "Humans rely on ingenuity. We improvise because we cannot rely on sheer strength or technology alone." Lyra studied him, trying to process what she was seeing. His actions had been decisive, effective, and life-saving, but they were unpredictable. That unpredictability both annoyed and fascinated her. Later, in the safety of their temporary quarters, Lyra reviewed the incident in her mind. She had faced countless simulations, fought against skilled opponents, and survived situations designed to test her limits. Yet, today had been different. The attackers had come from nowhere, and the chaos had tested her in ways she had not anticipated. Elias entered quietly, carrying a data pad with updates on the incident. "I reviewed the security logs," he said, handing it to her. "The attackers were funded by a rival faction that wants to destabilize Xylaria's influence here. Their aim was to capture or harm you, Princess. It is not random they planned this." Lyra frowned, her fingers tapping against the data pad. "So they are more organized than we thought, and we did not expect them to act so openly. They must have resources." "People watching." "Exactly," Elias replied. "Which is why we need to anticipate their next move. We cannot simply rely on defense anymore." Lyra's pride bristled at the implication. She had survived countless challenges, but now she realized that even she might need help. And that help annoyingly came from a human. The next morning, they held a council meeting with local leaders to address the attack and maintain diplomatic relations. Lyra led the meeting with her usual poise, discussing trade agreements, safety measures, and the political landscape. Elias stayed beside her, quietly observing, occasionally offering a suggestion that only she would notice was clever and precise. One of the leaders, a tall Varelian named Tarek, leaned forward. "Your presence here is unexpected, Princess. We were not aware that your delegation would be so heavily guarded." Lyra's eyes narrowed slightly. "I come to ensure that trade and peace continue without disruption. Security is a necessary precaution." Elias noticed subtle signs of tension in Tarek's posture-tight shoulders, a flicker of discomfort in his eyes. "Princess," he whispered, "he is hiding something. Watch how he responds if we adjust the trade terms slightly. His reaction will tell us more than his words." Lyra raised an eyebrow but followed his advice. She presented a minor change in the agreements, and Tarek's response was immediate. His polite smile faltered, and he shifted uneasily. Elias nodded subtly. "See, humans and perhaps all species have ways of reading intentions without words. You might find it useful." Lyra looked at him, a small part of her unwillingly impressed. Perhaps there was value in having a human protector, not just for physical safety, but for insight into the unexpected. That evening, as the twin moons of Varelia rose once again, Lyra and Elias walked through the palace gardens. The attack had left them both quiet, each lost in thought. Lyra finally broke the silence. "You were right," she admitted softly. "The attack was more dangerous than I anticipated. Your presence was necessary." Elias glanced at her, surprised by the rare admission. "I do what I can, Princess." "I am glad I could help." Lyra hesitated, then continued. "I still do not fully trust humans. Your ways are strange, but I cannot ignore that today you saved lives, including mine." Elias smiled faintly. "Trust is earned, Princess, and perhaps you will see that humans are not always what they seem." For the first time, Lyra felt a sense of uncertainty and also a glimmer of hope. The dangers on Varelia were far from over, and she realized that survival might require not just her skills, but the combined strengths of two very different worlds, Xyleria and humanity. As they walked back toward the palace, Lyra could not help but notice how Elias moved with calm confidence, always alert, always prepared. And for the first time, she admitted to herself quietly, reluctantly, that perhaps having a human protector was not the mistake she had believed it to be. Somehow, she would have to rely on him, and somehow, she was beginning to see that human ingenuity might just be the edge she needed to survive the threats ahead. The surface of Varelia stretched endlessly beneath the shattered remains of their star cruiser. Smoke curled from damaged panels, and the air smelled faintly of burnt circuits and ozone. Princess Lyra stood at the edge of the wreckage, her sharp green eyes scanning the jagged horizon. Her normally composed expression was tight with frustration. "This is unacceptable," she muttered. "I cannot believe this ship could be sabotaged under my watch." Captain Elias Kane crouched nearby, examining a torn section of the hull. Sparks flickered from exposed wiring, and the smell of scorched metal filled the air. "It wasn't your fault, Princess," he said calmly. "Someone wanted to make sure we never landed safely, and they succeeded. For now," Lyra turned sharply, her chest heaving with irritation. "For now, we are stranded. We have no way to call for help, no immediate escape. How do you suggest we survive, Captain Kane?" Elias stood, brushing soot from his uniform. "We adapt. We use what we have, and we stay alert. That's how humans survive in worse conditions than this." Lyra frowned. Adaptation was a concept she understood, but the thought of relying on a human to lead survival efforts was unpleasant. Yet, deep inside, she knew that arguing now would achieve nothing. The first hours were tense. They had to leave the wreckage before rival forces discovered their location. Elias led them to a nearby canyon, where jagged rocks formed natural shelters. The sun dipped behind the mountains, casting long shadows that made the canyon feel like a labyrinth. "We'll camp here for the night," Elias said. "The terrain is rough, but it's defensible. If anyone comes after us, they will have to find a way through the canyon, and that will slow them down." Lyra's pride bristled. "You assume there will be pursuers. Perhaps it is safer to attempt repairs immediately and leave." Elias shook his head. "Immediate repairs are impossible. We don't have the tools or spare parts. This canyon is our best chance. We survive tonight, and then we plan." Reluctantly, Lyra followed him deeper into the canyon, her mind racing with frustration and worry. Night fell quickly on Varelia. The twin moons cast an eerie silver glow across the rocky terrain. The temperature dropped sharply, and the wind howled through the canyon like a living thing. Lyra and Elias huddled near a small fire he had built, using remnants of the Star Cruiser and dry brush from the canyon floor. "You are skilled with survival," Lyra admitted reluctantly, watching him move efficiently. He had created a makeshift water filter, reinforced the shelter, and even improvised traps in case predators came close. Elias glanced up at her, his eyes calm and steady. "Humans have to be. Survival is about observation and creativity, not just strength or technology. You've been trained to survive in structured conditions. This is different." Lyra's lips pressed together, unsure whether to feel insulted or grateful. She was capable, yes, but the wild, unpredictable landscape of Varelia was teaching her quickly that training alone was not enough. The next morning brought new challenges. The canyon was not empty. Strange, predatory creatures lurked in the shadows, their glowing eyes following every movement. Elias moved silently, scanning the terrain, while Lyra remained tense, weapon ready in hand. "Princess," he whispered, crouching beside her, "we must move carefully. They are curious, not immediately hostile, but if we provoke them, we risk attack." Lyra nodded. She did not trust these creatures, but Elias's presence was strangely reassuring. Despite her reluctance, she realized that following his lead was their best chance. Hours passed as they navigated the canyon. Elias used clever diversions to avoid direct confrontation with the predators, leading Lyra along paths that were hidden from view. She could not help but notice the ingenuity behind every action. Humans thought differently, reacted differently, and in this environment, that difference was saving their lives. By midday, exhaustion set in. They had found a small stream and took time to drink and rest. Lyra knelt beside the water, dipping her hands in cautiously. She watched her reflection, pale and dirt-streaked, and realized just how vulnerable they truly were. "You are different than I expected," she said quietly, almost to herself. Elias glanced at her, raising an eyebrow. "Different how?" "Calm, clever, unpredictable, but effective. I cannot say I like having to rely on a human, yet here I am, following your lead." Elias allowed himself a small smile. "Trust is earned, Princess. I did not expect it overnight, but survival sometimes forces us to consider possibilities we would normally dismiss." Lyra looked away, unwilling to admit that she agreed. She clenched her fists, silently reminding herself that she was Lyra of Xyleria. She did not need anyone to survive. She had survived countless challenges on her own. Yet the canyon, the creatures, and the ruined Star Cruiser whispered a different truth. As they moved deeper into the canyon, Elias noticed unusual tracks along the sandy floor. He crouched, studying them closely. "Princess," he said, "these tracks are fresh. Someone else has been here recently, possibly scouting. We are not alone." Lyra's heart quickened. "Rival faction?" she asked. "Most likely," Elias replied. "They may have followed us from the city, or they may have been lying in wait, expecting us to come here. Either way, we need to stay alert." Lyra glanced at him, and for the first time, fear mixed with admiration in her eyes. He was calm, collected, and thinking several steps ahead. While she was used to facing danger directly and decisively, "I see why the council assigned you," she admitted softly. Elias nodded but did not respond further, focusing instead on the tracks ahead. By late afternoon, they encountered the first direct threat. A small patrol of mercenaries emerged from behind rocks, weapons raised, scanning the canyon. Lyra instinctively drew her weapon, ready to fight. Elias stepped beside her, his stance relaxed but alert. "Do not rush," he whispered. "Observe first." Lyra hesitated, then lowered her weapon slightly, following his instructions. She noticed patterns in the mercenaries' movements that she would have missed on her own. Elias signaled with subtle hand gestures, and together they navigated the terrain, avoiding detection. When the patrol finally passed, Lyra allowed herself a small, grudging smile. You are effective, she said quietly. Elias shrugged. So are you, princess. But survival often requires teamwork. Lyra did not respond, but inside, she began to understand something important. Strength alone was not enough. Intelligence, creativity, and cooperation could make the difference between life and death. And for the first time, she realized that Elias Kane possessed those qualities in abundance. That evening, they reached a small cave suitable for shelter. Elias lit another fire while Lyra examined the surroundings. She had to admit to herself reluctantly that she had underestimated the human. You have ingenuity, she said, her voice soft. I did not expect it. Elias looked at her, expression neutral. You doubted me. That is natural. I have faced it before. But sometimes, the measure of a protector is not just in skill, but in adaptability. Lyra nodded, keeping her pride intact. Adaptability, yes. Something I may need to learn as well. For the first time, she felt a spark of respect for the human beside her. Perhaps survival on Varelia would teach her lessons she had never expected to learn lessons. Not just in leadership, but in trust and cooperation. Night fell again, colder than the previous one. The twin moons cast long, shifting shadows across the canyon walls. Lyra sat beside the fire, staring into the flames, lost in thought. Elias remained alert, but quiet, giving her space while maintaining vigilance for hours. Silence passed, broken only by the occasional howl of distant predators. Lyra finally spoke, almost to herself. I never thought I would say this, but I am glad you are here. Elias glanced at her, expression calm. I am glad as well. Together, we have a better chance of surviving this. Lyra looked at him, her green eyes reflecting the firelight. Do not think this means I trust humans fully. Elias smiled faintly. Understood, princess. Trust is earned one step at a time, and for the first time, Lyra allowed herself to believe that perhaps, just perhaps, this human protector Owing, unpredictable and stubborn as he was, might be exactly what she needed. The storm came without warning. Dark clouds gathered over the jagged mountains of Varelia, and the wind screamed through the canyon like a living thing. Rain fell in heavy sheets, turning the rocky paths into slick, treacherous trails. Princess Lyra and Captain Elias Kane were making their way toward a safer location. When the first signs appeared, branches snapping, rocks shifting, and the unmistakable roar of distant waterfalls swelling with the storm's fury. This is bad, Lyra shouted over the wind, gripping her staff tightly. We need shelter immediately. Elias nodded, scanning the canyon. There's a cave system ahead, partially hidden by rocks. We can make it, but we must move fast. Lyra followed, boots sliding on wet stones. She had survived many dangers before, but the raw power of the storm made her chest tighten. This was unlike anything her training had prepared her for, and for the first time, she realized that Elias's calmness, his ability to read danger and act quickly, was something she desperately needed. The journey to the cave was fraught with peril. Small rock slides tumbled down the canyon walls, and the path was obscured by rushing water from sudden streams created by the storm. Lyra's grip on her staff was firm, but she could feel the fatigue in her muscles. Elias, ever vigilant, offered steadying hands and words of instruction. Step carefully here, he shouted, pointing to a stone barely holding on the edge of a stream. Trust your balance, but move deliberately. One wrong step, and the current takes you. Lyra nodded, focusing on his directions. She had resisted following a human before, but now, she could not imagine navigating this chaos without his guidance. Step by step, they made their way through the canyon, Elias leading and she closely behind, both alert to every sound, every shadow. Finally, they reached the cave, a small hollow carved into the mountainside. It offered temporary refuge from the storm, though it was damp and narrow. Inside, Elias quickly set up a makeshift barrier using debris and rocks to prevent water from flooding. Further in, Lyra huddled against the wall, dripping and exhausted, her mind racing. You move fast, she said between deep breaths, still struggling to regain composure. I would have been swept away without you. Elias shook his head. We move fast because we must. We survive because we plan and act. Your instincts are good, princess, but even the strongest cannot fight nature itself. Lyra stared at him, a strange mixture of admiration and frustration rising in her chest. She had always prided herself on independence, on handling challenges alone. And yet, in this moment, she owed her life to a human she had once dismissed as reckless. The storm raged on outside, but the real danger came shortly after, as the twin moons of Aurelia cast brief light through the cave opening. Lyra noticed shadows moving along the walls. Her sharp green eyes caught subtle movements, footsteps not caused by the wind. Elias. She whispered, her hand instinctively moving to her weapon. We are not alone. He nodded, his expression calm but tense. Rival faction. They followed us. Stay close and trust me. Lyra clenched her jaw, frustration and fear warring inside her. She had faced countless enemies, but this was different. The storm and the rival faction combined created a situation where strategy alone was not enough. Survival required coordination, and the person she needed most was the very human she had resisted. The first wave of attackers appeared at the cave entrance. Elias moved with remarkable precision, intercepting one mercenary with a swift strike before he could reach Lyra. Another tried to flank from above, but she spun and used her staff to trip him. Though barely managing to keep her balance on the wet stone floor, stay close. Elias shouted over the roar of the storm. Watch the walls, they use shadows to their advantage. Lyra followed, moving with a combination of instinct and newly acquired awareness. She realized that Elias's guidance was more than just physical protection. He was teaching her how to think in chaos, how to anticipate danger in ways she had never considered. The battle in the cave was intense. The rival faction pressed forward with a combination of brute force and clever tactics, trying to exploit the narrow spaces and unstable footing. Elias countered with precise movements, using the environment to his advantage, throwing loose rocks, creating barriers, and forcing the attackers into positions where they could not use their numbers effectively. Lyra, initially frustrated by the need to rely on him, found herself adjusting her movements according to his instructions. Step by step, strike by strike, they fought as a team, and in that moment, she understood something vital: cooperation, trust, and combined skill were more powerful than individual strength. At one point, Lyra attempted a daring maneuver on her own, hoping to catch a mercenary off guard, but a misstep sent her sliding toward a chasm within the cave. Panic surged through her as she realized the fall could be fatal. Princess. Elias's voice cut through the chaos. Without hesitation, he lunged, grabbing her just in time. They tumbled together to a safer spot, breathless and wet, but alive. Lyra's heart pounded. For the first time, she felt the weight of vulnerability, the undeniable truth that even her extensive training could not guarantee survival. And she owed her life to him? They paused briefly, catching their breath. Lyra looked at Elias, green eyes wide with a mixture of gratitude and shock. You saved me, she said softly, the words heavy with meaning. He nodded, expression calm. I did what I had to do. Survival is about protecting each other when we can. You saved others before, now it was my turn. Lyra's pride refused to admit the depth of her reliance on him, yet her heart knew the truth. She owed him more than words could convey, and for the first time, she accepted that humans, despite their differences, could be trusted. The storm continued outside, but inside the cave, a fragile calm settled. Lyra and Elias worked quickly to fortify their temporary shelter. Using loose rocks and debris, they created barriers and traps to delay further intrusions. Elias even rigged a small system to detect movement outside, allowing them to prepare for any additional threats. Lyra watched him work, her mind racing. She had underestimated humans, their ingenuity, and their resilience. Elias's calm confidence, his ability to improvise under extreme pressure, and his unshakable focus had saved her life. And she realized something that made her stomach tighten with reluctant admiration. She could not have survived this alone. As the storm finally began to ease, the rival faction retreated, frustrated by the unexpected defenses and the combined skill of Lyra and Elias. The cave battered and scorched, had survived. So had they? Lyra sat against a rock, exhausted and dripping, but her gaze rested on Elias with a newfound respect. I owe you my life, she admitted, her voice low and serious. I never thought I would say this, but I do. Elias nodded, expression unreadable, though a faint warmth lingered in his eyes. I do not expect gratitude, Princess. What matters is that we survived, and we will continue to do so together. Lyra closed her eyes briefly, taking a deep breath. She had always believed she was invincible, that her training and skill were enough. But tonight had proven her wrong. Strength alone was not enough. Survival required trust, cooperation, and the courage to rely on others. And for the first time, she realized that Elias Kane, human, stubborn, unpredictable, was exactly the ally she needed. By dawn, the storm had passed, leaving the canyon glistening with rainwater and mist. Lyra and Elias emerged from the cave, battered but alive. The landscape was still treacherous, but their bond had strengthened. Mutual respect had been forged in the crucible of danger, and the princess knew that from this point on, she could not ignore the value of her human protector. She glanced at Elias, a small smile forming on her lips. We survived, she said simply. Yes, he replied, and we will continue to survive whatever comes next. For the first time, Lyra allowed herself to feel something she had never admitted before, trust, and deep down, she knew that their story was only beginning. The journey back to Xylaria was quiet, almost reflective. The Star Cruiser, patched with temporary repairs, hummed steadily as it cut through the dark expanse of space. Princess Lyra sat in the observation deck, staring at the stars streaking past, each one a distant sun she could not reach. Beside her, Captain Elias Kane monitored the ship's systems. Calm and precise, his presence a steady reassurance she had not realized she needed. The mission to Varelia had tested her in ways she had never expected. The attack at the trade hub, the sabotage of their ship, the treacherous canyon, and the storm, all of it had forced her to confront a truth she had resisted her entire life. Strength alone did not guarantee survival. Cooperation, trust, and ingenuity mattered just as much. Lyra's green eyes flicked toward Elias. He was reviewing the reports, but occasionally he glanced at her, as if gauging her state of mind. She remembered the moment in the canyon when he had saved her from falling into the chasm, and her chest tightened. I never thought I'd say this, she murmured quietly, mostly to herself. But I owe you my life. Elias's gaze softened, though he remained composed. You've done the same for me, Princess. You saved others, led courageously, and made decisions I could never make alone. We complement each other, whether you realize it or not. Lyra hesitated, unused to such candid acknowledgement. Humans were so different from Xylarians, direct, emotional, yet disciplined in their own ways. And she realized, perhaps for the first time, that these differences were a strength, not a weakness. When the Star Cruiser approached Xylaria, the capital city gleamed like a jewel against the dark velvet of space. The twin suns were rising, painting the spires with gold and crimson light. The Galactic Council had been informed of their safe return, and a small delegation was waiting to welcome the princess. Lyra straightened, regaining the poise expected of her station. Yet she felt a new confidence within her, one shaped not just by training and lineage but by the trials she had endured on Varelia. She had survived because she had allowed herself to rely on another, because she had accepted Elias Kane as her protector, her partner in survival. As they docked, advisors and officials rushed forward, offering greetings and congratulations. Lyra nodded politely, but her mind was only half on the formalities. Her thoughts returned to Elias. His calm, analytical mind had kept her alive. His courage had prevented disaster, and most importantly, his presence had forced her to see beyond her own limitations. After the initial formalities, the princess and Elias were taken to a secure council chamber to debrief with the Galactic Council. Leaders from multiple species waited, some curious, others skeptical, but all attentive. Lyra stepped forward, her voice clear and authoritative. The events on Varelia were more complex and dangerous than anticipated. The rival faction demonstrated both cunning and courage, and their resources exceeded initial intelligence reports. We survived due to swift action, strategic thinking, and the coordinated efforts of multiple teams. She paused. Glancing at Elias, Captain Elias Kane's guidance and ingenuity were instrumental in our survival. His unconventional tactics complemented our own skills and allowed us to navigate challenges that could have otherwise been fatal. A murmur ran through the council. Humans were often underestimated in Xylaria circles, and Lyra's acknowledgement carried weight. The princess continued, her tone steady. This mission demonstrates that cooperation between species and the value of diverse perspectives is not just desirable, it is essential. The lives saved, including my own, are proof of that truth. Elias inclined his head slightly, accepting her words without arrogance. He did not need praise. His satisfaction lay in the fact that they had survived together, later, in private quarters. Lyra and Elias reviewed the data collected during the mission. They analyzed the rival faction's tactics, mapped escape routes, and planned contingencies for the future. The tension between them, once thick with mutual skepticism, had shifted to a productive partnership. "You've changed," Elias remarked quietly, observing her focused expression. "You've become more open to ideas outside your training, less rigid, more adaptable." Lyra glanced at him, a small, wry smile forming. "And you've learned that humans are occasionally capable of discipline." Elias chuckled softly. "Occasionally?" "Occasionally," she confirmed with mock seriousness. The shared laughter was brief but genuine, a moment of connection that transcended species, rank, and past prejudices. For the first time, they were equal partners, bound not by protocol, but by experience and mutual respect. Over the following weeks, Lyra began implementing small but meaningful changes in Xylaria's approach to diplomacy and defense. She advocated for interspecies cooperation, recognizing that the strengths of humans and others could complement Xylarian skill. Her advisors were initially hesitant, but her confidence and the success of the Varelia mission lent weight to her arguments. Elias remained by her side, offering counsel and insight without overshadowing her authority. They debated strategies late into the night, sometimes fiercely, sometimes with humor, but always with a shared goal: the safety and prosperity of Xylaria and its allies. In private moments, Lyra reflected on the lessons learned. She had faced the storm, the canyon. The mercenary Zen had survived not because of her training alone, but because she had allowed herself to trust someone different from herself. And that trust had proven invaluable. One evening, standing on the palace balcony overlooking the city, Lyra spoke softly, mostly to herself but not entirely. "I never thought I'd say this, but I would not have survived Varelia without you, Elias." Elias stood beside her, hands resting lightly on the railing. "And I would not have made it through the mission without you. You were calm under pressure, decisive, and courageous. I followed you as much as you followed me." Lyra studied him, green eyes thoughtful. Perhaps humans are not so reckless after all. Perhaps. There's more we can learn from each other than I realized." Elias nodded, a faint smile tugging at his lips. "I think we both have learned a lot. About survival, about trust, about cooperation. And this is only the beginning." Lyra allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. Considering the future, she had spent her life believing she could do everything alone. Now, she understood that true strength included the courage to rely on others, to recognize the value in difference, and to work together toward common goals. Days later, the Galactic Council officially praised their survival and strategic success. Lyra's acknowledgement of Elias Kane became a symbol of interspecies collaboration, inspiring dialogue across the galaxy about trust, alliance, and shared responsibility. The mission's success had far-reaching implications, and Lyra knew that future challenges would be met not alone, but with allies she could rely on. In a quiet moment, Elias approached her with a simple observation: "Princess, the galaxy is vast. We will face many more storms, many more challenges. But together, we are stronger than any one of us alone." Lyra turned to him, green eyes bright with determination. Yes, together, for the first time in her life, She did not feel the need to carry the weight of the galaxy alone. She had a partner human, stubborn, and brilliant who had proven himself in the crucible of survival. And in that realization, she felt a calm confidence she had never known. Their bond was no longer just duty. It was mutual respect, trust, and a promise forged in fire and storm. The princess had survived Varelia, yes, but more importantly, she had learned that survival, leadership, and life itself were strongest when shared. And as the twin suns rose over Xylaria, casting their golden light over the city, Lyra and Elias stood side by side on the balcony, ready to face whatever the universe would throw at them next together. The princess no longer needed to doubt her protector. She owed him her life, yes, but more than that, she had found an ally, a teacher, and a friend. And that, she knew, was worth more than any crown or title. The galaxy was wide, the future uncertain, and the challenges many. Yet, with Elias Kane at her side, Princess Lyra felt ready for anything. Together, human ingenuity and Xylarian strength would shape a new path, one built on courage, trust, and the unbreakable bond of those who had survived the storm.